Well, hello, welcome back. Happy Wednesday. Today we're going to make my new favorite summer outfit. This is the cutest thing I think I've ever made. I think it is. Today we're gonna make this little two-piece set. The top is just this crop top thing, and then on the back side it has an open back with a bow at the top, and it is so cute. And then for the shorts, they have an elastic waistband and pockets. And when I say this is easy to make, this is so easy to make. I'm gonna show you how I drafted this pattern at home. So it's just gonna be a fun time today, and I hope you join us. Why do I sound like Mr. Rogers? Okay, before we get started, here are some things that you'll need. You will need a shorts pattern. You can buy this, you can draft this. I'm gonna draft my pattern using these shorts. I think that's the easiest way to do it. You'll need some elastic for the waistband, a safety pin for the elastic, a ruler, and some measuring tape because we're gonna draft the shirt pattern in just a minute. You'll need some scissors and 1.5 yards of medium weight fabric. I'm using cotton. Today I'm using my Singer Quantum Stylist sewing machine and my Singer Stylist serger. But if you don't have a serger, you can always use an overcast stitch or a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. Okay, now my least favorite part every time. I'm gonna take some body measurements. I'm gonna measure my upper bust, and then I'm gonna measure my regular bust. Hate this, I hate this. And now I'm gonna measure my waist, and I forgot to breathe for a second. I always forget to breathe when I take my measurements. It's just something silly I do. Okay, now I'm measuring my neckline to my waistline, and then my regular neckline, and I'm also gonna measure where I want the armpit slant to be. So I'm gonna use these athletic shorts to draft my pattern, but any loose fitting shorts will work. So we're gonna start with the front of the shorts. So I'm folding the shorts in half, and you wanna make sure the seams of the shorts are right there on the edge because we're gonna trace right along where the seams are around the entire shorts. So I'm just gonna trace the shorts all around using some chalk. And it should look like this. You can't see that at all. So now I'm gonna add a little bit of length at the top because I want these shorts to be a little bit higher waisted, and I'm also adding about 1 inch to the width of the shorts at the side seam and also at the center seam. And I'm also gonna extend this inseam a little bit because I want these to be a little bit more loose fitting. And then I'll draw my hemline. And then just a little minor detail, I'm gonna do a little curved edge here on the inseam and up here at the waist. Just get a little natural curve going. Okay, now I already factored in seam allowance into all of my measurements, so I'm gonna do 1 inch at the bottom and 1/2 inch all around. But if you need to add seam allowance, go ahead and add that now. And one important thing, you just wanna make sure the waist measurement is your waist divided by 4 plus seam allowance. And then you also wanna make sure you've given yourself enough room for the hips. Once everything looks good, you can label it and cut it out. Okay, for the back side of the shorts, I'm gonna lay with the back side facing up. And I'm just gonna trace down the side seam, and then I'm gonna pull out that whole crotch seam. I hate saying that word. I'm gonna pull out that center seam so that we can trace exactly where the seam is. And the back of the shorts should curve a little bit more than the front of the shorts. That is normal. And it should look like this. Now I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna add a little bit of length, and I'm gonna give myself a little more room at the hips and down the center seam. And we wanna make sure the inseam of the back of the shorts matches the inseam of the front of the shorts because they're gonna connect there eventually. So you wanna make sure they match up perfectly. And then I also want to make sure the side seam of the back of the shorts matches the side seam of the front of the shorts. Those will also connect. So I'm going to trace that side seam a little bit and slant my hemline up to match the front of the shorts. And now I'll draw my seam allowance. Okay, for the pockets, these are so easy. All you do is draw a line, trace your hand, add some seam allowance, and cut it out. And we're going to need 4 pocket pieces. Now I'm measuring the waist of the front of the shorts, and I'm also measuring the waist of the back of the shorts. This is gonna help me figure out how wide the waistband needs to be. So I'm just gonna draw a rectangle, and this is gonna be cut on the fold. And I made mine 4.5 inches tall. That's gonna be my 2-inch waistband folded in half, and then a little bit of room for seam allowance at the bottom. Okay, now for the fun part, we're gonna cut everything out. And if you're wondering, Jessica, Where is the shirt pattern? I'm gonna show you in just a second, but basically I decided to redesign this top halfway through the tutorial, and I'm so glad I did. It turned out so cute. So now I'm measuring out some rectangles for the neckline binding. So my top front binding piece was 2 inches by 21 inches, and then I cut 2 pieces for the back binding that were 2 inches by 27 inches. Basically, the back binding pieces need to be extra long because if you notice, the binding actually turns into these little bows. I also cut 2 shoulder straps, 4.5 inches by 15 inches. And if these look wide, it's because eventually we're gonna fold them in half. Okay, and last but not least, I'm gonna cut out my pocket pieces. So we just need 4 pocket pieces. All right, so here was my original plan for the top. It was just this weirdly shaped front and 2 pieces also weirdly shaped for the back. Basically, I did a basting stitch all the way across and I scrunched it up so that it would have this little ruched look, and then I tried it on. Imagine 2 straps right here, and by the look on my face, you can tell that I hated it. This is just all wrong. This is all wrong. It's too poofy. It's like bulging out at like the weirdest parts. So I did my favorite thing. I seam ripped everything that I had just sewn, and I went back to the drawing board momentarily. So I measured 10.5 inches down. This was my neckline to waistline with seam allowance included. And then I made a line 9 inches wide. This was my waist measurement divided by 4 plus seam allowance plus whatever breathing room you need. And then I drew a line at the top to match the bottom line and made a little mark where I want my neckline to end. And then I made a little mark where I want the armpit to end, and then I'll connect my bodice at the side. And then I drew a little 3.5 inch dart here where the bust will be, and reminded myself to cut this on the fold. Then I decided to make my dart a little bit longer, and then last time I'm changing it, I moved the dart down a little more. That's where it should have went. Silly me. And then I'll cut it out. Okay, next I'm gonna do a little thing called slash and spread. Don't panic, it sounds really complicated, but basically I'm just cutting 2 lines so that I'm able to pivot and open up this dart. And I'm also gonna cut a little line going to the bottom so that I can pivot it in 2 different places. So I moved the armpit piece in by about 1/2 inch, taped it down, and then I also moved the bottom corner in by 1/2 inch and taped it down. And now we have a full inch for a dart here to work with. So then I'll just take a ruler and true my lines. That's what the professionals say. We're just straightening our lines. You can use a French curve if you need, but I'm just using a regular curve. And now we have a finished front shirt piece, bodice piece, whatever you want to call it. And we're done. Now for the very last thing, I promise this is so easy. For the back of the shirt, I'm gonna draw a horizontal line. Again, my waist measurement divided by 4 plus seam allowance, so mine was 9.5 inches. And then to get the length, all we need to do is lay down the front piece, pinch the dart in, and whatever length that front piece is gonna be the length of the back piece. And this is probably a good time to mention that I am not an expert pattern maker. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not. I kind of feel like I should have drawn a slanted edge there at the side seam to match the slanted edge of the front shirt piece, but comment below what you think. It still ended up working out in the end somehow. And now we just need to cut out our new and improved shirt pieces. So there are the 2 for the back and the 1 piece for the front cut on the fold. I'm going to use this tailor's chalk and trace the dart onto the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm just using my finger as a guide, and then I'll grab my ruler and straighten my lines. And then I'm going to flip it over to the other side and do the same exact thing for the other side. So now we can pinch those closed, and we're just going to sew them along those slanted edges. All right, I'm gonna press those darts flat, and now we're almost done with the top. We're gonna connect the back pieces to the front. So I'm just lining them up at the side seams. This is when I realized I probably should have made those side seams more slanted, but you live and you learn. And I'm also gonna hem the open edges of the back of the shirt. So the pieces that are gonna be exposed in the back, basically, we wanna hem those pieces right now. So I ran mine through the serger first, and then I just turned it in by 1/2 inch, pressed it down, and then I top stitched it down. And I did that to both sides. And for the neckline binding, it's just this little strip of fabric. I'm gonna fold it down by 1/2 inch and then again by 1/2 inch toward the wrong side of the fabric. And then I'm folding it in half. So this is gonna create just like a little bias binding kind of thing. So basically the neckline will go inside that little binding and finish the edge. So I'm gonna do the same thing for the 2 back binding pieces. And then we're gonna connect the back binding to the front binding. So we're just gonna open the binding pieces up, put them right sides together, and just sew them down the edges. So this will create one long binding piece. Once that's done, we can connect our binding. So I'm just lining them up at the center, and I'm pinning the right side of the binding to the wrong side of the shirt. And basically I'm gonna sew all along the top edge of the shirt. So we're gonna leave those little ties open for now. Now I'm taking my scissors and gently cutting the seam allowance that I just sewed. This is gonna help avoid some of the bulkiness at the neckline. So once that's done, I'm just gonna fold that binding over to the right side of the shirt, and we should have this beautiful edge. And I'm also gonna close off these little ties. So I'm just folding the end in by 1/2 inch and sandwiching it in there. So we're gonna close the tie, top stitch the neckline of the shirt, and then sew the other tie closed. And then I'm gonna hem the bottom of my shirt. Just a little double fold hem or whatever kind of hem you wanna do. And now the last thing to do is the straps. So I'm just folding them down in half and pressing them down. And I'm gonna sew them along the long edges, so hot dog style. Once those are sewn, I'm gonna attach a safety pin and feed it through itself. So basically, we're just flipping this tie right side out. Simple as that. Look how fun this is. I'm gonna press my straps flat, and now we can attach them to the shirt. All right, it is day 2 of sewing, and boy, do I have something to show you. Now, I am so proud of this top, kind of. For the most part, pretty proud of it. There's like some flaws, but for me designing this in like 10 minutes and it being kind of an accident, she's pretty cute. But I just learned yesterday that if you're sewing like thick straps on something, you actually need to like sew it at kind of an angle, because if you sew it 90 degrees like parallel to the actual shirt, sometimes it doesn't lay right. So I'm gonna seam rip it and like kind of sew it at an angle, if that makes sense. Hopefully it'll lay down better. All right, moving on to the shorts. These are so easy to make. So I'm laying down the front side and the back side of the left leg, and then I'm gonna lay the pockets down 3 inches down and just sew it right there where the pockets are. And I'm gonna also do that for the right leg. We're just sewing the pockets on. And now we can press that seam that we just sewed. And now we can connect the front leg to the back leg. So I'm just laying them down right sides together. And I'm gonna sew down the side seam, around the pocket, and down the rest of the side seam. And I'm also connecting them at the inseam. Once both legs are done, we're gonna connect them at the crotch seam. Ugh, I hate saying that word. So I'm flipping one leg right side out and I have the other leg inside out. So basically you just wanna put the right side out leg inside the inside out leg. And I'm just pinning them all along that crotch seam. I'm gonna say it at least 5 more times. And I'm sewing along that curved edge. And since this is a curve, it always helps to clip the edges a little bit. So I'm just clipping the seam allowance. And this just helps the fabric lay a little bit better around the curves. I'm also gonna serge that edge that I just sewed. But again, you can use an overcast or a zigzag stitch. But now I have this beautiful professional finish. And now we have the cutest shorts I've ever seen. Now we just need to attach the waistband. So I'm gonna fold them in half and I'm gonna lay the elastic down. Basically, we're gonna need to leave a little opening right there for the elastic to go through at the very end. So I'm just marking to leave that part open and I'm gonna put my waistbands together. So remember, just leave this little edge open for us to put elastic in later. And then we're gonna close up this edge of the waistband. And now, just like the neckline binding, I'm just folding each side down by 1/2 inch, pressing it down, and then I'm gonna fold the whole thing in half. This just helps putting any kind of binding on so much easier. Okay, now I'm gonna put the waistband around the shorts. So the right side of the waistband is against the wrong side of the shorts. Make sure that little slit is there, also on the wrong side of the shorts. And I'm just gonna sew all around that waistband. Once that's done, now we can fold the waistband to the right side of the shorts and just top stitch it down really, really close to the edge. All right, I cut a piece of elastic 2 inches smaller than my waist measurement, and that was the perfect measurement for me. And I'm just gonna feed that elastic through the waistband. So simple. Once I get to the end, I'll overlap the edges and sew them down with a zigzag stitch. Zigzag stitches are perfect for anything stretchy. And now all we have to do there is just hand sew that little opening and no one will ever know it was there. And our final step, wow, we have made it. I'm just hemming the bottom of the shorts. So I'm just doing a simple double fold hem, but you can do whatever kind of hem you want to do. And last but not least, I put my outfit on my dress form and I reattached the straps at more of a slanted angle in the back, and they laid down so much better. So slanted angle was the key. And now we have the cutest outfit I have ever seen. The cutest one I've ever made. I love the top. The back side of the top is my favorite part. But overall, I love this outfit. So good for summer. Well, this brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you liked it, give it a little thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. Find me on Instagram. DM me and send me a picture if you make this at home because I would love to see it. And stay tuned. In the next few weeks, I'm really gonna try to revamp the top a little bit and perfect it because I feel like it can be so much better. So look out for a new video. But thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!